The Atlanta Braves went out and got Chris Sale this offseason because of what he can do on the field. But I think a lot of it also has to do with what he brings in the clubhouse and the fire that he brings to this team. And that's why I think Chris Sale is the biggest X factor for the Atlanta Braves going into 2024. We'll discuss him and some other players who could step up for the Braves this year in today's podcast. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out the podcast at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. Always enjoy hearing from you. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 10K by opening day. We're about 20 days away, getting close to there. We're about 9,400, so could use your help there. And you can help me get there by hitting the thumbs up button on this video so other people see it and hopefully subscribe and join our family here at Locked On Braves. You're listening on the audio version. Thank you so much for your support as well. I'd appreciate a 5-star review, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get Locked On Braves. And thanks so much to all my everydayers out there who listen to us 5 days a week. We got plenty of Braves coverage coming your way all year long. Looking at those out there with me live right now, we got Nick Harvey, Matthew Housen, Monty 2K, Ecuadorman, Lone Wolf, Sean Finley in here, AK, Alan Daniel, Brian Willits as well, Leland and Mike joining the show live with me. Thank you so much for being here. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. On today's episode, we are going to look at the biggest X factors in my mind for the Atlanta Braves going into the upcoming season. Now, I want to know yours as well, so let's get that discussion started in the comments section on YouTube. But who are some of your biggest X factors for the upcoming season? When I think about an X factor and what that means, in my mind, I view it as somebody who is a difference maker. Maybe somebody that you didn't have the year before that's going to come in to put you over the top. Maybe somebody who is looking to break out and is going to be a bigger performer this year than they were before. Maybe somebody that was injured coming back that you believe is going to have a big year and really take your team to the next level. When I think about an X factor for a team, that's kind of the criteria that I'm looking at. Which player do I think is going to step up, not necessarily out of nowhere, but somebody that's going to give you that production that you didn't have before to really make your team even better. And that's why, for me, the obvious answer is Chris Sale. Braves made some big moves this offseason. They went out and got Jarred Kelenic. They got Chris Sale. They upgraded the bullpen or brought some guys back. But in my mind, the biggest move and the move that can make the most difference is the move to go get Chris Sale. The reason I say that, and I don't say Jarred Kelenic, is that, and we'll talk a little bit more about Kelenic later, but Braves offense is already really good. Kelenic could be terrible, and it might not make that much of a difference for the outcome of this season. But Chris Sale, if he is good, and if he is not even necessarily the Chris Sale of the past before all the injuries, but if he is, a middle, top of the rotation type of arm, that's going to make a huge difference for this Braves team, especially going into the postseason, having another dominant type of arm in their rotation that they can count on. And if somebody else goes down, but even more so than that, I think with Chris Sale, almost every Braves player who has been asked about Chris Sale and what they think about his addition and what they think, their first thoughts of him in camp, you read those comments from just about every player, and they talk about his attitude in a good way. They talk about his passion, his desire to win, and the fire that he has. I'm not here to tell you that this Braves team hasn't had that fire the last 2 years going into the postseason. But certainly there was a lot of talk about that after this past year, especially when you look at the difference between that Braves team and that Phillies team, which played with a lot of fire and passion and urgency that you really didn't see from that Braves dugout. I think this move is intentional. Obviously, they wanted to go out and get another good arm to add some depth to the rotation, but I think it's intentional because of who Chris Sale is and what he represents, and just that passion and drive that he does have that's going to resonate throughout this clubhouse and push everybody else to give their best, along with Spencer Strider. I mean, Spencer Strider is that too, but I just think that part of going to get Chris Sale, I think that was intentional, to get somebody else like that to just light another fire under this Braves team and maybe give them a little bit of that edge that they've been missing. Of course, he has to be healthy in my mind in order to have that impact. I don't think you can have that type of impact if you're injured and you're not in the fight. You're not currently in the battle with your teammates. So he has to be healthy, I think, to have that impact. But I have to imagine that was part of the thinking when Alex Anthopoulos made the trade for Chris Sale, is not only do they hope that they're getting a really good pitcher to give them some depth in the rotation, but they're giving somebody who is known to have a lot of energy and can bring that to this Braves team. Now, again, it's not just that. I think he has the ability to still be a really, really good pitcher. In just 102 2/3 innings last year, he accumulated 2.1 FWAR with a FIP of 3.80 and a K per 9 of almost 11. So still really, really good production in a smaller sample size. His expected ERA on Baseball Savant was 3.61. So you're looking at the expected ERA for Chris Sale last year, more somewhere in the 3.6 to 3.8 range instead of the 4.2 range. He doesn't have that 35% strikeout rate he had at his prime, and almost nobody does. That is just ridiculous. But he is still around 30%. He was just under 30% last year at 29.7, and he still carries a very low walk rate, and he had an expected batting average against of just 211 last year. So he doesn't really walk anybody. He doesn't give up a ton of hits, and he still strikes out batters at a near 30% clip. That's all numbers just from last year. Granted, he hasn't pitched a lot in the last 4 years, but when he did last season, he was still really, really good. We've already seen him hitting 97 with the fastball in spring training, so he has that velocity that he can get to. He averaged 94 miles per hour with the fastball last year. I mean, if that ticks up a little bit and we're seeing more 95, 96, 97 regularly, I don't necessarily think he has to have that to be successful. He obviously didn't last year and still threw really well, but if he gets a little bit more even velocity tick, I think he could be even better. You look at that slider for him, it had a whiff rate of 38.9% last year. I think there is this thought, because he's been injured and hasn't pitched a lot for so long, that he's washed up and he's not good. That's not the case based on what we saw last year. A near 40% whiff rate still on his slider, and batters hitting just 162 against that pitch. It is a 16 mile per hour difference between his fastball and that slider coming out of that weird arm slot. You've seen it already in spring training. It is really difficult for hitters to pick up, and that's why he can still be so effective. The other part of getting Chris Sale and why I think he's the biggest X factor is he gives you depth in that starting rotation. Obviously, he comes with his own injury risk, but now with Strider, Fried, Sale, and Morton, you have 4 legitimate starters potentially for the postseason. If one of them happens to go down, then you have a more legitimate top of the rotation upside arms to pick up the slack. Last year, Morton went down. You had to go with Bryce Elder in that game 3. This year, if something were to happen, you'd be going hopefully to Morton. If Sale or Fried went down, or Strider even, it'd be Morton that would slide in to that 3rd spot in an NLDS. So it gives you more depth of high quality pitchers. And yes, maybe Sale and Morton aren't the top of the rotation arms that they once were, but they still have the ability and the strikeout stuff that you want in the postseason to go out and dominate for 5, 6, 7 innings. They still have the ability to do that when they are on, and that's the difference. Bryce Elder doesn't have that. Darius Vines doesn't have that. Huascar Noah even, I don't know if an AJ Smith-Shawver has that. We saw him, briefly in the postseason last year. We know Chris Sale and Charlie Morton can do that. They have the experience, which is another part of the Chris Sale factor. He has nearly 1,800 innings in the big leagues under his belt. He knows how to pitch. He's also pitched 34 innings in the postseason, plenty of postseason experience, including in 2008 when he helped the Red Sox win the World Series. He came out of the bullpen in the clinching game to close out that series by striking out the side. So he has that postseason experience as well. It hasn't always gone great for him. I'm not going to lie there. A 6.35 ERA in the postseason doesn't look great, but that mostly comes from two bad outings. He got victimized by the 2017 Astros. He gave up 7 earned runs in 5 innings to them, and then he gave up 5 earned and just 1 inning pitched against the Rays in 2021. Outside of that, he's been solid. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's been great in the postseason, but again, outside of those 2 appearances, he's been pretty solid in the postseason. But just ultimately, I think if Chris Sale is healthy, I think he brings so much more to the table and provides so much more for the Braves this year. And that's why I think he is that huge difference maker. I think that's why he is the X factor for the Braves this upcoming season. But he's not the only one. I got some other names as well that I think are going to step up and become big parts of this Braves team to help put them over the top and hopefully get them back to the World Series championship. We'll discuss those names here next. Conference tournaments are here, which means the biggest moments in college basketball are getting closer. Be a part of the action on PrizePicks for both men's and women's college basketball. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays alive. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Who doesn't love a Taco Tuesday? Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. They have over-unders on spring training games. If you want to get in on that action as well, it's really simple to do so. All you have to do, log on to PrizePicks, pick between 2 to 6 players, or you can pick groups of players. Say you think you want to get on Ronald Acuna and Matt Olson, go over under on home runs in a game. You can pick both of those guys combined. Decide if you think they'll go over under on certain stats like home runs, hits, RBIs, stuff like that, runs scored, strikeouts for baseball and basketball scene, points, blocks, or assists. You pick the over unders on those. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 when you download the PrizePick app today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow on Thursday, we will have a conversation with Tyler Redmond of Braves on Deck. You said you wanted more guests. That was the name that came up a lot. So we're going to have Tyler on the show Thursday, and then Friday, I'll have a pre-recorded mailbag episode. I'm going to be out this weekend. So had a lot of you go ahead and send me in some questions. I'll answer those on Friday's podcast. And then next Monday, we will look at 5 prospects who could be traded during the 2024 season. So all that kind of on the podcast here over the next several days. But let's jump back into our X factors. And the next one that I want to talk about, moving over to the position player side, is Michael Harris, MH2. I think the crazy thing about Michael Harris is that he's still just 22. He's actually going to turn 23 on Thursday. So happy early birthday to Michael Harris as I'm recording this on Wednesday night. He's still a kid. he is still learning this game, and he just seems to be getting better. And I think that's going to continue. He really improved his approach against lefties last year, something he struggled with in his rookie season. He hit even better against lefties last year than he did righties. I don't know if that will stick or not, but certainly it was a huge improvement from 2022 to 2023. I think the next big thing for him will be refining his approach at the plate and perhaps taking a few more walks. Now, maybe that takes away some of what makes him so good and his aggressiveness, but he can get in that Ozzie Albies funk as well, where he's going up there swinging first pitch and rolling over to second base. I think that's kind of the next level for him is, having a plan going up there, but knowing when to scrap that plan, working at bat, maybe take a walk or, just shoot one the other way. I think that is the next level for Michael Harris. But again, he's about to turn 23. He is still a kid. He is still learning and growing his game at the big league level. And I think he's super talented. And I think he's going to be an all-star at some point, if not in 2024. I think another thing too is a lot of people forget he began last year with back issues. He was not healthy to begin the season, and that slowed him down a good bit. Through May 25th last year, he was hitting 165 with a 479 OPS and just over 100 plate appearances. I remember going and looking on FanGraphs and looking at OPS by starters who had over 100 in plate appearances at that time. I want to say I know he was in the bottom 5. I don't think he was dead last, but he was one of the worst hitters in baseball through nearly 2 months last year. Now, he missed some time over those first 2 months, but he was one of the worst hitters in baseball through almost 2 months of the season last year. And a lot of that had to do with his health. But from that point on, he hit 321 with an 881 OPS and over 438 plate appearances. So it's a much bigger sample size, and we got to see how great I think Michael Harris can be. If we get a full year of a healthy MH2, again, like I said, I think we're looking at an all-star level player. And I think he certainly has that potential and will make an all-star team someday. And it could very well be in 2024. Another part of why I think Michael Harris is going to play a huge role this year, while I like him hitting in the 9th spot, and I said it a lot last year, I was okay with him staying in that 9 hole. Hitting in front of Ronald Acuna Jr. gives him great protection, gets him on base for the top of the order. But I think it's time for him to graduate from that 9 spot. I think he's proven himself. I don't think he needs that protection of Acuna anymore. And I don't think he needs the less pressure that comes with batting 9th. I think that needs to go to Jared Kelenic now. And Brian Snitker has essentially said that's going to be the case, that Kelnic's going to bat 9th and Harris is going to move up to 6th in the order. The difference between batting 6th all year and batting 9th all year is almost 50 plate appearances. So we're talking about nearly 50 more chances for Michael Harris at the plate if he's batting 6th all year. And I think there's chances for him to bat even higher. I wouldn't hate batting him up 2nd against righties, and that's going to be the majority of the time. I don't think that's going to happen unless somebody else gets injured. But either way, even if he's moving up to 6th in the order, it's going to bring him to the plate more often. It's going to give him more opportunity to drive in runs. It's going to give him an opportunity to have more of an impact, see some of those counting numbers go up. And I think maybe one of the more intriguing things is that I think the stolen bases are going to go up. When you're batting in that 9th spot and getting on in front of Acuna, the last thing you want to do is get caught stealing. But you're batting 6th in that order and you get on base, you want to try to make something happen so that if Orlando Arcia, pokes a hit, or Sean Murphy, which he can go deep at any point, but Jared Kelenic gets a hit, you are able to score on that. I think with him batting 6th, or essentially just not in front of Ronald Acuna Jr., I think we're going to see him be more aggressive on the base pass. Look, somebody who ranks in the 87th percentile in sprint speed, they need to be blowing past 20 stolen bases a year, especially with the new rules that we have. So I think he's going to get past 30 stolen bases this season, especially if he's batting up in the order. I think we see MH2 take another natural step forward in his progression in 2024. And I think this is again, you can't really call it a breakout year necessarily because he's already won NL Rookie of the Year. He had another 4-WAR season last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 5 to 6 WAR season, especially with his defense, see him win a Gold Glove, see him make an All-Star game. I think that all can happen in 2024. And while you may have some other players regress, maybe Marcell Ozuna comes back down to earth a little bit, maybe Matt Olson doesn't hit 50-plus home runs, I think some of that could be made up in Michael Harris, who I think has the potential for a 25-30 type of season at the plate. And obviously he's hit over 290 his first 2 years. I don't think there's any reason to believe he's going to, hit below 280. So I think it could be a huge year for Michael Harris where he goes from, really good player and gets kind of lost on a really great lineup to being an all-star player that, everybody nationally even knows about. So I'm really excited for this season for Michael Harris. Others to keep an eye on. I mentioned Jared Kelenic a couple of times on the podcast already. If he reaches his potential, it could be a huge difference, just giving the offense another weapon. Like I said, it's not the reason I didn't even really consider him to be one of the bigger X factors is because I think he could hit 240, 250, 15 home runs, 15 stolen bases, bat ninth in this order, 310, 320 on base percentage, a 2-WAR player, Eddie Rosario from last year. And it doesn't really affect this team, especially if nobody gets hurt. But if he reaches his potential and he's a more of a 260, 270 hitter, and he's more of a 2020 player, batting ninth in your order, hitting in front of Ron Acuna Jr., he has a nearly 10% walk rate, so he's going to get on base. If he does that, batting in front of Acuna like Michael Harris and Vaughn Grissom and Orlando Arcia have in past years, which has really helped them out, I think he's going to have a huge year for this Braves team, and it's really going to give them, it's already a deep lineup, but when you put that in your 9-hole, that is going to be just huge for this Braves team, and it could be another way for them to get back to the historic offensive numbers they put up last year. It's not wise to predict that they're going to repeat what they did on offense last year, but there is a path that you can see for them to get there realistically. Like I said, Ozuna, Olson may take some steps back. I think Riley can repeat his season, if not be even better. I think Acuna can repeat his season, if not be even better. And I think what Michael Harris can do and what potentially Jared Kelenic can do can make up for any other, even slight regression for some other players and make this offense one of the best of all time once again. I'm going to give you 2 more X factors, and this comes mostly for the postseason, but Hurston Waldrop and AJ Smith-Shawver, I'm going to put them together because I really just need one of them. I would love to have both of them, obviously, but if just one of them figures it out, if they figure out how to command their pitches more consistently, if they're able to stick in the rotation, it won't just be huge for 2024, but for future years as well. But why I consider them to be some smaller X factors for the upcoming season is because when you get to the postseason, and hopefully the Braves are there, that's where I think those two could become huge. We talked about the depth in the rotation earlier. If, let's say, a Sale and a Fried, they do go down, worst case scenario, Braves lose 2 starters going into the postseason again, you could start an AJ Smith-Shawver or a Hurston Waldrop if, they've come along and made that progression. Even if those guys are healthy, you can move AJ Smith-Shawver and or Hurston Waldrop to the bullpen, and suddenly you have just a nasty, dominant type of arm coming out of the bullpen that can pitch multiple innings. So, again, I don't know what role either 2 of those are going to play this year, but I think there is the possibility for one or both of them to come in and play a huge role that could put this team over the top and give them just even more ammo on their pitching staff in the postseason with the stuff that they have that is going to play up in a postseason setting. And look, AJ Smith-Shawver, I'm not going to lie, it's spring training. I know we shouldn't put much stock into it, but that changeup that he has with that big fastball, if he can just learn to command that fastball and that slider more consistently, that changeup has been really good for him in spring training. I think there's big upside there, but again, whatever role it's going to be for them, whether you have to thrust them into the rotation because some arms went down or you stick them in the bullpen as another just big arm to come out to maybe get some outs in the middle of a game. Maybe your starter doesn't make it through 4 innings. You need to bring one of them in to try to bridge the gap. I think they could be huge X factors for the Braves this upcoming season in that way. All right, next we'll get to the news of the day, including Eddie Rosario. He finally signed, and it's not with the Braves, but it is somebody in the NL East. We'll discuss that here next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And whether you're like me and you're living the minivan life as well, they got you covered over there for that. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. And I really appreciate that these days. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the Ronald Acuna Jr. and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I want to remind you again that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. We'll get to a little bit of news of the day. Eddie Rosario signs a split contract with the Washington Nationals. He's able to earn up to $4 million. A lot of people have been asking me lately, are the Braves going to go out and get an Adam Duvall? Are they going to bring back an Eddie Rosario? They were never going to bring back Eddie Rosario the moment they went and got Jared Kelenic and said he was going to play every day. But it is somewhat interesting. The Braves had, I believe it was a $9 million option on him, and he couldn't even find a guaranteed major league deal out there for somebody who was a solid player last season. Like I said, a 1.5 WAR, F4 type of player, and he couldn't get a guaranteed deal. This offseason has been rough on players like that. But certainly, glad we're going to see Eddie some more. Hopefully he is not going to haunt the Braves. I've seen people already say he's going to hit a walk-off home run against the Braves. It's pretty much guaranteed. I see little E talking about 21 NLCS MVP. It was a great run with the Braves. I was on board for bringing him back. He was the one I wanted to bring back out of Jock Peterson and Jorge Soler. I may have been wrong in that, but I do think Eddie Rosario had some good years with the Braves. Obviously, a couple of years ago with the eye surgery that he had, that was pretty much a lost year. But what he gave the Braves in 21, and then even last year, I think he was certainly fine in left field, didn't hurt the Braves at all. But he signs a deal with the Nationals. Hey, look, now maybe the Braves trade for him at the deadline at some point and bring him back. But Eddie Rosario, for now, he's gone, but he's not far gone, as he'll be in the NL East. So we'll see him plenty. And I think he has a really good chance to get plenty of playing time on that team. Mike Zunino announced his retirement. So he goes along with Josh Donaldson and others who have announced their retirement this offseason. Corey Kluber as well. Nothing happening in spring training camp on Wednesday. The Braves had their first off day of spring training. I think it's one of 2 off days that they have this spring training. You do have Behind the Braves available now on YouTube, so you go check that out. I know I don't think they'll be on this episode. I haven't watched it yet, but I know they had their annual spring training golf tournament, so that'll probably be on next week's episode, and that'll be interesting to watch. We continue our countdown to opening day, and yes, Sean Finley says it. We are Nick Markakis days away from opening day. Kirby Yates also wore this number the last 2 years. Robinson Cano, Braves legend, wore that number. Jock Peterson, that is a true Braves legend. He wore it in 2021. And then, as mentioned, Nick Markakis wore it from 2015 to 2020. And then before that, Jason Hayward wore it from 2010 to 2014. So a really good run on outfielders there wearing 22 with Hayward, Markakis, Jock Peterson, Adam LaRoche, one of my favorite Braves. He wore it in 2009. Casey Kochman, another Braves first baseman that maybe not, we don't remember it quite as fondly. He wore it from 2008 to 2009. Marcus Giles from 2002 to 2006. Walt Weiss from 1998 to 2000, now obviously Braves coach, and Ken Griffey Sr. from 1986 to 1988. So we are 22 days away from opening day. Want to remind you again that tomorrow we will have a conversation with Tyler Redmond from Braves on Deck. So make sure you check that out. Friday, we will have a pre-recorded mailbag episode. Some really good questions there talking about Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. So hopefully they're still available by the time that comes out. And we also will talk about Jared Kelenic, because I see Miguel Fria and others in there talking about Kelenic and his slow start in spring training. Just how long is that leash on Jared Kelenic? I'll discuss that on Friday's mailbag episode. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Please help me get to 10K by opening day. If you've already subscribed, you can do that by hitting the thumbs up button. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.